My name is Camille Hartman, and I'm 35 years old. 2 nights ago, my husband slid a folder across our kitchen table like he was closing a deal, not a marriage. Thought you should know, Mark said, voice steady, rehearsed. I've been planning my exit for months, and I'm taking what I'm entitled to. He didn't yell, he didn't cry. He just leaned back in the chair we'd bought together at IKEA and watched me, like he was waiting for the explosion. I didn't give him one. I opened the folder. Separation papers, asset lists, his neat signature already on the last page. He'd highlighted sections in yellow, like he was presenting a PowerPoint. I talked to a lawyer, he went on. This is fair. House, retirement, savings. We split everything. You sign, we're done. Clean break. I nodded slowly, my heart surprisingly quiet. You sure this is how you want to do it? Yes. He mistook my calm for shock, maybe. I know this is a lot, Camille, but it's better if we don't drag it out. I don't want a war. I just want my half. Half. That word tasted bitter, especially when I knew what he'd already taken. I flipped through the pages, pretending to read what I'd already expected to see, and then I closed the folder gently. There's an envelope inside, I said. At the bottom. It's for you. His eyes narrowed. What envelope? The white one. I slipped it in while you were talking. I kept my tone casual, almost bored. If you're going to take your half, you should probably see the whole picture first. He frowned, thumbed through the papers, found it. Plain white, unmarked. For a second, he hesitated. He had no idea that everything he'd done for the last 4 months was stuffed inside that envelope. Before Mark opened it, before his face changed, before his hand started to shake, I should probably tell you how we got here. Because this didn't start with a folder. It started with me, years earlier, convincing myself that steady meant safe. If you'd asked me a year ago to describe my life, I would have said it was solid. Not glamorous, not tragic, just steady in a way I'd built one spreadsheet, one late night, one careful decision at a time. I work as a financial analyst for a mid-sized tech company. Budgets, forecasts, making sure other people's bad decisions don't sink entire projects. My calendar is color-coded. My bills are auto-paid. I know my credit score without logging into anything. I like ballast, the unexciting weight that keeps the ship from tipping over. Mark used to joke that I was the most stable person he'd ever met. You're like a human level, he'd say, wrapping his arms around my waist from behind while I stood at the kitchen counter. Everything lines up when you're here. We met when we were 26 at a mutual friend's game night. He was charming, funny, loud where I was quieter. He worked as an associate at a law firm, all future and ambition. We dated for 2 years, got married in a small ceremony his parents helped pay for, and 3 years ago, we bought a house that everyone said was such a grown-up move. From the outside, our marriage looked solid. Weekend brunches, occasional trips, inside jokes. We talked about kids someday and debated whether we should finish the basement or update the kitchen first. I thought we were building something together. About 6 months ago, the ground started to shift. So slowly at first that I almost convinced myself I imagined it. Mark's phone became an extra limb. He used to leave it face up on the counter, notifications lighting up from group chats and fantasy football. Suddenly, it was always face down. Then it had a password. Then the password changed. He started having more late nights, client meetings, last-minute filings, networking events that ran until midnight. You know how it is, he'd say, loosening his tie as he walked in the door, smelling faintly of expensive perfume I didn't wear. If I don't show my face, I don't move up. When I asked how his day was, he got vague. Long, boring, you don't want to hear about it. Subject changed. Every single time. Classic signs, right? The kind you read about in threads you scroll past, telling yourself, that's awful, but that would never be me. 4 months ago, life decided to prove me wrong. I was supposed to be gone for 2 days on a work trip, fly out in the morning, back the next night. At least that was the plan until my client's system outage magically resolved itself early. I changed my flight at the airport, caught an earlier one, and landed at 3:00 p.m. instead of 9:00. I texted Mark, but his phone went straight to voicemail. Not unusual if he was in court or in a meeting. By 3:45, I was pulling into our driveway, thinking about throwing on sweatpants and catching up on email from the couch. The second I opened the front door, I heard it. Laughter, a man's voice, and a woman's. Mark's voice, low and familiar, drifting from upstairs. A woman's higher, warm, answering him from our bedroom. I stopped dead in the entryway. My hand was still on the doorknob. For a full 5 seconds, I couldn't move. My brain refused to attach meaning to what my ears were telling it. Then I heard the soft creak of the bed and another laugh. You'd think I'd go charging up the stairs, that I'd fling the door open, demand answers, throw something, scream. I didn't. I set my purse down silently, closed the door as quietly as I could, and backed out onto the porch. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my teeth, but my body moved on autopilot. I walked back to my car, got in, and drove half a block down, parking where I could still see the front of the house in the rearview mirror. I waited. 20 minutes later, the front door opened. A woman I didn't recognize stepped out. Mid-30s, sleek dark hair pulled into a low twist, tailored navy dress, heels that said, "I don't take public transit." She carried herself like someone who'd never been told no. She walked to a black BMW, got in, and drove away. Confident, unhurried. I just sat there, nails digging into the steering wheel, watching my husband's, whatever she was, turn at the end of the street. Another 30 minutes passed before I pulled back into the driveway, long enough for my face to cool, for the tremor in my hands to settle just enough, long enough to decide that if I went in there, I wasn't going to ask any questions I didn't already know the answers to. Mark was in the kitchen making coffee when I walked in, like this was any other Tuesday. "You're home early," he said, smiling. "I thought your flight wasn't until tonight." Got lucky with an earlier one. I set my keys on the counter, watching him carefully. "How was your day?" He didn't even blink. "Boring. Worked from home, caught up on some emails. The usual." He lied to my face so smoothly I almost believed it, if I hadn't just watched a woman walk out of our house. That was the moment something in me shifted. A quiet, deliberate click. I didn't confront him. I didn't scream or beg or ask who she was. I went upstairs later, changed the sheets while he was in the shower, and moved like a ghost through my own bedroom. Every object suddenly suspect. That night, after he fell asleep, I lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling, and realized I was done giving him the benefit of the doubt. If he was going to blow up my life, I wasn't going to stand there holding the match for him. The next morning, I called Evan Price. Evan and I had been friends since freshman year of college, back when my biggest problem was whether I could afford textbooks and coffee in the same week. He'd gone into law enforcement for a while and then switched into private investigation work. We hadn't talked in a few months, but when he picked up and heard my voice, he knew something was wrong. "Cam, you okay?" "Not really," I swallowed. "I think Mark is cheating on me, and I think he's planning more than just walking away." "Tell me everything." I did. The phone, the late nights, the perfume, the woman leaving our house that afternoon. The lie about boring emails. He was quiet for a second. "Do you want proof, or do you want confrontation?" "Proof," I said, surprising myself with how fast the answer came. "I want to know exactly what I'm dealing with, and if he's messing with our money, I need to know that too." "Then let me work," Evan said. "I'll keep it discreet. I'll track where he goes, who he's with, and I'll look into your joint accounts, see if anything looks off. But Camille, once you see it, you can't unsee it. You sure you're ready for that?" "I'm not sure of anything," I said, "except that I'm not going to let him blindside me." A week later, he sent me a secure link to a folder labeled with Mark's name and a date. I opened it alone at my desk, blinds drawn, heart already knowing what my eyes were about to confirm. The first photo was of Mark sitting across from the woman I'd seen in my rearview mirror. They were in the bar of a downtown hotel, his hand resting on her knee under the table, her head tilted toward him in a way I recognized too well. Her name, according to the file, was Sabrina Lane, senior partner at his firm. And buried deeper in the report was the detail that made my stomach really drop. Sabrina wasn't just his boss. She was his ex-girlfriend. And the photos were only the beginning. Because in the next set of documents, the ones with numbers instead of faces, I saw something worse than infidelity. I saw money, our money, quietly bleeding out of our accounts, and into an account I'd never heard of, under Mark's control alone. That was the moment I understood. My husband wasn't just planning to leave me. He was planning to rob me on his way out. Evan called me that night instead of just sending another email. "Camille," he said, skipping hello. "You at home?" "Yeah." "Alone?" "Mark's at the office," I said. Late filing or late Sabrina, who knows? He let out a low breath. "Okay, I sent you a second file. You need to open it while I'm on the phone." My laptop was already open. A new secure link sat in my inbox, labeled with a string of numbers and the word financials. I clicked. The first page was a simple summary. Dates, amounts, account numbers. It took my brain a second to line the columns up with what they meant. Walk me through it, I said, even though I could already see. All right. Paper rustled on his end. Over the last 6 months, roughly $47,000 has been moved from your joint checking and savings into a separate account. It's under Mark's name only. No joint access. No shared statements going to the house. I scrolled through the itemized list. Tiny transfers. 200 here, 500 there, slipping out on random Tuesdays. Mixed in were bigger hits. 3,000 while I was at a conference. 5,000 when I'd flown to see my parents. He's clever about it, Evan continued. Most of the amounts are small enough and spaced out enough that you'd just read it as normal life if you weren't looking for a pattern. But put them together. It's a siphon, I whispered. Exactly, but that's not the worst part. He had my full attention now. There's a worse part beyond 47,000? He paused. When he spoke again, his voice had that careful, measured tone people use when they know they're about to push you off a cliff. Cam, a personal loan for $30,000 was opened 2 months ago, in your name. The room tilted. I grabbed the edge of my desk. In my what? Your name, he repeated. Application lists your employer, your income, your social, your address. It also has your signature on it. Problem is, the signature on the bank's copy doesn't match the one on your driver's license, or your mortgage documents, or any legit paperwork I pulled. I stared at the scanned form on the screen. There was my name in print. Camille Hartman. Below it, a version of my signature that looked like someone had tried to trace it from memory. I did not sign this, I said, each word slow and sharp. I didn't even know it existed. I know, that's why I called instead of just emailing you a PDF. This isn't just wandering money. This is fraud. I swallowed hard. So, let me guess. The money from that loan ended up in his secret account too? Most of it, yeah, Evan said. And if anything goes sideways, that loan company is coming after you, not him. I pressed my thumb into my temple. A dull ache had taken up residence there days ago. Now it flared. So my husband is sleeping with his ex, who is also his boss, and he's cleaning out our accounts while forging my signature on loans. That's the picture, he said quietly. Cam, this is financial abuse. He's not just planning to leave. He's planning to make sure you're the one left holding the bag. A bitter laugh escaped me. Great, love that for me. I'm serious, Evan said. This isn't the kind of thing you just work through in therapy. You need a lawyer, yesterday. I swiveled my chair to face the window. Outside, the streetlights had come on, making our quiet cul-de-sac look like a postcard. If I confront him now... You tip your hand, he cut in. He'll move faster, cover his tracks, maybe drain whatever's left. You can't unring that bell. So what do I do? My voice sounded small to my own ears, which I hated. Talk to someone who does this for a living, he said. I know a couple good family attorneys. I'll text you names. Show them everything I sent you. Let them guide your next move, not your anger. I stared at the forged signature on the screen and felt something inside me go very, very still. Okay, I said, I'll call tomorrow. Linda Chen's office smelled like leather and coffee and expensive printer ink. Clean, precise, efficient. The kind of place where problems walked in messy and walked out sorted into labeled folders. She was in her 40s, hair pulled back in a sleek bun, glasses that made her look like she could see right through whatever story you tried to tell. I'm glad you came in now, she said after I'd laid everything out. Photos, transfers, loan documents, Evan's reports. Most people wait until the bomb goes off and then show up in the crater. She flipped through the pages, her expression growing colder by degrees. These transfers, she tapped the list with her pen, are not ordinary joint spending. They are designed to avoid detection. Small, spread out, concentrated around your travel dates. I thought we were just bad at sticking to a budget, I said, heat creeping up my neck. That's exactly what he was counting on, Linda replied. As for this, she held up the loan paperwork. This is forgery, fraud. If we took this to the district attorney, there would be a criminal file with your husband's name on it by the end of the week. My stomach dipped. So, what are my options? She leaned back, steepling her fingers. Option 1. We file for divorce immediately, attach all of this, and pursue both civil and criminal remedies. We ask the court to freeze assets, assign the fraudulent loan to him, and seek reimbursement and possibly punitive damages. I imagined Mark's face when a process server showed up at his office. A petty, vindicated part of me enjoyed that image. And option 2? I asked. Option 2, she said, is we prepare everything quietly, Protect what's left and wait for him to make his move. If he files or tries to strong-arm you into an amicable split, we counter with this evidence and an agreement that's extremely unfavorable to him. You come across as the blindsided, financially abused spouse. He comes across as a cheating, thieving fool. Why wait? I asked. Why not just pull the pin now? Because, Linda said calmly, right now he believes he is in control. He's arrogant. He thinks he's 3 steps ahead. Men like that get sloppy when they think they've won. If he presents himself as the one ending the marriage, and then we reveal all of this, his legal position collapses. Any I deserve half argument evaporates. I thought about Mark's easy lies, his confident smirk when he talked about possibly making partners soon, the way he'd wave his phone around like a trophy. What happens if I wait and something goes wrong? I asked. That's why we don't just wait, she said. We act. We move your direct deposits into an account in your name only. We document every transfer he's made. We get a copy of the loan agreements directly from the bank, and we draft an agreement he'll sign when the time comes that protects you completely. What kind of agreement? A postnuptial, she said, or, if he files for divorce, a marital settlement agreement. In it, he waives any claim to the house, your retirement, your savings. He agrees to assume full responsibility for the fraudulent loan. He agrees to pay back every dollar he took. In exchange, you agree not to pursue criminal charges. I stared at her. You think he'll sign something like that? Not today. A small, cold smile tugged at her mouth. But after he realizes what you know? After his own lawyer explains how bad this looks if we go to court? Yes, I think he will. I sat there in silence for a moment, listening to my pulse in my ears. This will require patience, she said more softly, and a performance. You will have to live with him for a while as if you don't know any of this. Can you do that? I thought of 3 months of dinners across from a liar, of pretending I couldn't see the betrayal radiating off him like heat. No, I admitted, but I'll do it anyway. She nodded once, as if that was the answer she'd been expecting. Then let's get to work. The next weeks blurred into a surreal double life. On the surface, nothing changed. I packed his lunches sometimes because I'd always done that. We still argued lightly over which show to watch. We went to his sister's birthday dinner and smiled for photos, his arm draped around my shoulders like everything was fine. Underneath, everything was different. I diverted my paycheck to a new account in my name only. I stopped using our joint credit card, leaving his spending trail clean and visible. Every time he moved money, I saved the statement. Every notification from the bank got forwarded to a folder Linda could access. When he said he had a late meeting, I noted the time he left, the time he came back, the places Evan's GPS logs said he'd been. Hotels, restaurants, Sabrina's townhouse. Nights were the worst. He'd lie next to me scrolling his phone, the screen lighting his face. Sometimes he'd turn away slightly, thumb moving faster. That little half smile I'd once thought was for me, now reserved for someone else entirely. I'd stare at the ceiling and remind myself, this is not forever. This is evidence. This is protection. This is going to break me, I told Evan once, weeks in when we met for coffee under the pretense of catching up. You're already breaking, he said gently. This is you directing the fall instead of letting him push you. Linda checked in regularly, each call a small anchor. 2 more months, she'd say. 1 more month. He'll make his move soon. Men like this don't sit on their grand exit forever. They like the moment too much. She was right. About 3 months after I'd sat in her office for the first time, Mark started walking around the house with a strange, restless energy, opening and closing drawers, checking the mail himself instead of letting me get it, taking phone calls in the garage. He'd watch me sometimes like he was trying to read how hard it would be to knock me over. One Tuesday evening, he came home earlier than usual. He didn't kiss my cheek, didn't ask about my day. He carried a thick folder in his hand, tan and official looking, and his eyes were bright in a way that made my skin crawl. Camille, he said, standing in the doorway of the kitchen while I chopped vegetables, we need to talk. There it was. I set the knife down, wiped my hands on a towel, and turned to face him. Okay, I said, let's talk. We sat at the same table where we'd once made pros and cons lists about buying this house. He laid the folder between us like a trophy and launched into the speech I knew he'd been practicing in his head for weeks, maybe months, about being unhappy, about wanting different things, about how it was better for both of us if we ended things now. He slid the papers toward me, pages already marked with sticky notes and precise highlights. I think splitting everything down the middle is fair, he said. House, retirement, savings. We both walk away with half. No drama. No lawyers. We can be adults about this. Half. I looked at his confident face, at the pen he'd left uncapped on top of the folder, at the future he thought he was about to script for me. Inside my chest, something cold and steady settled into place. While he talked, I reached under the table to my bag, fingers closing around a plain, white envelope I'd tucked there hours earlier, just in case. By the time he finished his speech and leaned back like he'd nailed the closing argument in court, the envelope was already in my hand. "Mark," I said quietly, sliding it into the folder when he glanced away, "before we get into what's fair," I tapped the stack of papers between us. "You should probably open the envelope I put inside." Mark blinked at me, confused. "What envelope?" "The white one," I said, keeping my tone neutral. "Bottom of the folder. I put it there while you were talking." He frowned, rifling through the papers with that impatient, dismissive flick of his fingers, the one he used when a junior associate on his team said something not worth his time. When he found the envelope, he paused. It was plain, unlabeled, thin. Nothing about it suggested danger, which made this moment feel almost darkly poetic. He tore it open with a quick, annoyed motion. The first page slid out smoothly. He stared at it. For a moment, he didn't understand what he was seeing. I watched the exact second comprehension hit, like a pin dropping into a still room. His pupils dilated. His mouth parted, just slightly. His entire body went very still. "What is this?" he whispered. I kept my hands folded neatly on the table. "Evidence." He glanced up sharply. "Evidence of what?" "Of you draining our accounts," I said softly. "Of the 47,000 you quietly moved into a private account you never told me about." He flipped to the next page, the transfers laid out in neat, chronological order, annotated by Evan and stamped by the bank. His breathing changed. "And," I continued, "the loan you opened in my name. $30,000. Forged signature. Forged documents. All very traceable, all incredibly prosecutable." The color drained from his face. He shook his head too fast. No, these are misunderstandings. You're misreading." "Keep going," I said. His fingers trembled as he flipped to the next set of pages. Hotel receipts, time-stamped photos of him and Sabrina at restaurants and bars, and a downtown hotel where they always requested the same suite. The last page in the stack was a single sheet of paper with a bold title, "Summary of Evidence of Marital Misconduct and Financial Fraud," compiled by private investigator Evan Price. Under it was a clean bulleted list of his affair, transfers, and document forgery. He set the page down like it physically burned. "Camille," he said, voice suddenly hoarse, "you had me investigated?" "I protected myself," I corrected. "You knew?" His voice cracked. "For how long?" 4 months, I said, "since the day I came home early and heard you laughing with Sabrina in our bedroom." He swallowed hard. Why didn't you confront me?" "Because," I said evenly, "you were already planning your exit, and you were planning to rob me on your way out. If I confronted you too soon, you might have finished the job." He opened his mouth to speak, closed it, then tried again. Camille, it wasn't like that." "What was it like?" I asked. "Enlighten me. Help me understand what version of events makes financial fraud not that big of a deal." He couldn't answer, so I kept going. "While you were sneaking around with your ex-girlfriend/boss, siphoning our money, forging my name, I was documenting everything, every transfer, every message, every lie, every hotel stay, every piece of proof the court would need to understand exactly who you are." He swallowed again, throat tight. "You can't use this. This is a violation of privacy." "Your lawyer can argue that if you want," I said, leaning forward. "But financial records, bank statements, and loan documents tied to my name, those are admissible. Sabrina being your married boss, also admissible because it proves motive, and the forged loan paperwork, that's a felony." His jaw tightened, but panic flickered beneath it. I slid a thin blue folder across the table. "This," I said, "is the agreement you'll be signing." He stared at it like it was a bomb. "Agreement?" he echoed weakly. "Prepared by my attorney," I said. "It states the following. You waive any claim to the house. You waive any claim to my retirement accounts. You waive any claim to our savings. You assume full responsibility for the fraudulent loan. You return every dollar you took within 30 days. And you vacate the house within 60 days. His face contorted. "That's insane." "No," I said, voice quiet but unyielding. "This is consequences. You can't force me to sign that." "You're not being forced," I said. "You're being given a choice." He barked a bitter laugh. Oh, a choice. Right. Yes, I said. Choice one. You sign this agreement, return the money, take the loan, and walk away clean. No criminal charges filed. No exposure at your firm. Sabrina's husband doesn't get sent the affair documentation. His breathing went ragged. And choice two? He asked. I file everything with both the district attorney and the family court, I said calmly. You will lose your job. Sabrina will lose hers. You will face charges, and anything you think you're entitled to financially will evaporate. He stared at me, eyes dark, angry, desperate, stunned, all at once. This is blackmail, he spat. This is self-defense, I corrected. He shoved the chair back, pacing the kitchen like a caged thing. I need to talk to my lawyer. I assumed you'd say that, I said. Take the evidence with you. Think it over. He left that night, slammed the door hard enough to rattle the hinges. I didn't chase him. I didn't cry. I simply collected the dishes from the table, loaded the dishwasher, and ran it on the eco-cycle, just like always. At 7:12 a.m. the next morning, the doorbell rang. Mark stood on the porch with a man in a navy suit, his lawyer apparently, and a face that looked like he hadn't slept. We sat in the living room. His lawyer tried to look confident. Mark tried to look angry. Neither were doing a very good job. Linda joined via speakerphone, cheerful as a blade. Mr. Harrison, Linda said to Mark's lawyer, before we begin, let me be clear. We have evidence of financial fraud, forgery, and marital misconduct. If your client would like to dispute any of that, we can move to discovery and involve the district attorney. The lawyer cleared his throat. Well, we don't think criminal involvement is necessary. I agree, Linda said, which is why my client is offering a reasonable path forward. Mark shot her lawyer a look like, fix this. His lawyer tried. This agreement, he said, lifting the document Linda drafted, is extremely one-sided. Linda didn't miss a beat. So was the financial exploitation. Your client systematically drained marital accounts and forged Ms. Hartman's signature to take out a loan. The agreement allows him to avoid criminal prosecution. That is more generosity than most attorneys would advise. Silence. Mark's jaw flexed. His lawyer tried again. Perhaps we can renegotiate some of the... Would you like me to forward the evidence packet to the DA's office? Linda asked pleasantly. The lawyer froze. Mark looked at me then. Really looked. Anger, fear, shame. The realization that he'd underestimated me so completely, it bordered on insulting. His voice was barely above a whisper. If I sign this, you won't press charges? That's correct, I said. Sign, return what you took, take responsibility for the loan, and leave quietly. He closed his eyes. His hand shook as he picked up the pen. He signed. Every page, every initial. When he slid the agreement back across the table, he didn't look at me. It didn't matter. The moment he finished the last signature, something uncoiled in my chest, a tension I hadn't realized I'd been carrying since the day I heard him laughing with Sabrina in our bedroom. It was over. Not the whole story. But the war he thought he'd win? It ended the second he put his name on that page. Mark didn't speak to me when he left that morning. He walked out with his lawyer, shoulders stiff, gaze fixed forward. Like if he didn't look back, none of this had really happened. The moment the door clicked shut, the house exhaled. Or maybe that was me. The silence felt strange, too clean, too empty, but not unwelcome. I stood in the middle of the living room, the signed agreement still warm in my hands, and let myself feel nothing. Not triumph, not heartbreak, just the kind of quiet that comes after a storm finishes tearing through a place. For the next few days, Mark came and went at unpredictable times. He slept in the guest room when he was here, though slept was generous. He mostly paced, muttered into his phone, and slammed cabinets like the house had wronged him personally. He wasn't angry about what he'd done. He was angry about losing. He packed some of his clothes, but not all. Took his suits, his dress shoes, his watch collection. Left behind random artifacts of the life we'd shared. A baseball glove from an anniversary trip, a coffee grinder he insisted on buying, the mug he always used on Sunday mornings. Every time he walked out the door, the house felt a little lighter, a little more mine. On day 5, he was gone. Not permanently. He still had 60 days to vacate per the agreement, but gone enough that his toothbrush was missing, and the smell of his cologne no longer clung to the hallway. I didn't ask where he was staying. I didn't care. 23 days after he signed the agreement, my phone buzzed with a deposit notification. 47,000 taozhou, external transfer received. One lump sum. I stared at the number for a long moment, feeling strange, vindicated, sickened, relieved. Maybe all three. An hour later, Mark texted, Transfer completed. I stared at the message. No apology, no explanation, just a transactional acknowledgement. I replied, "Received. Thank you." 20 minutes later, another message came through, this one unexpected. "This is Mark's father. I'm using his phone. May I speak with you?" I stepped out onto the porch before calling him back. "Camille," Mr. Harrison said, his voice deep and weary. "We didn't know. Not about any of this." I closed my eyes. I know you didn't. "When Mark came to us asking for money," he paused. "We thought he was exaggerating, but then we saw the documents, the transfers, the loan, Sabrina." His voice tightened. "We taught him better than this." "You didn't do this," I said. "We raised him," he replied quietly. "That makes it ours, too." A long breath. "We covered the amount he owed you, not for his sake, for yours. You didn't deserve to suffer financially because of his choices." My throat tightened. "Thank you." "You're a good woman, Camille," he said. "We're ashamed of him, truly." Another pause. "For what it's worth, his mother and I hope you find someone who treats you the way you should have been treated all along." I murmured something like "thank you," though the words blurred at the edges. When I hung up, I sat on the porch steps and let the cool air settle around me. It wasn't joy, it wasn't closure, but it was clean, and that was enough. The next week, one of Mark's coworkers, someone I barely knew but who had always been kind in passing, texted me out of the blue. "You didn't hear this from me, but things blew up at the firm. Sabrina's husband found out. Mark is being strongly encouraged to resign. Sabrina is on leave." I stared at the screen without responding. I hadn't needed to send the affair evidence to anyone, not this time. The world had its own ways of balancing ledgers. 55 days after he signed the agreement, Mark officially moved out. I wasn't home. I made sure of it. My friend Evan handled the coordination. Mark packed clothes, books, a few personal items, and left everything else, including most of the furniture, the dishes, the wall art we picked together, the rug we fought about for 2 weeks. Evan sent me photos afterward. The house looked emptier, but not devastated, not ruined. Just reset, like a room waiting for someone to decide what came next. 6 weeks later, the separation was finalized. No arguments, no negotiations, no last-minute theatrics. The judge reviewed the agreement, acknowledged the returned funds, assigned the fraudulent loan to Mark, and stamped everything with quiet efficiency. Just like that, I kept the house. My retirement accounts, my savings, my clean credit. Mark walked away with what he brought into the marriage. A few suits, a collection of watches, and the consequences. 2 months later, I was grabbing a latte during my lunch break when the door chimed behind me. I didn't have to turn around. I felt it, a familiar shift in the air, a discomfort pressing between my shoulder blades. When I finally looked, Mark was standing a few feet away, holding a paper cup and looking smaller, thinner, palmer skin, shoulders not quite squared. He hesitated, then walked over. "Hey," he said softly. "Hi. Can I sit?" I nodded. Why? I don't know. Maybe curiosity, maybe closure, maybe I was simply too tired to care. He sat across from me, gripping his cup with both hands like he needed the warmth to anchor himself. I wanted to say, he exhaled shakily, "I'm sorry, Camille, for everything." I waited. "I know I destroyed our marriage," he said, "but I didn't realize until the fallout, how much I also destroyed myself." I tilted my head slightly. "You almost destroyed me too." His eyes glistened. "I know." His voice cracked. "I was selfish, entitled. I thought I deserved more. I thought Sabrina made me feel important, and you—" He swallowed. "I took you for granted." "Sabrina didn't make you feel important," I said. "She made you feel exciting. There's a difference." He nodded slowly. "I see that now." Silence stretched between us. He looked at me with something like awe, or maybe shame. "You were 3 steps ahead of me the whole time." "I protected myself," I said simply. "You did more than that," he whispered. "You made sure I faced consequences." "No," I said. "You made sure you faced consequences. I just didn't shield you from them." He shut his eyes for a second. "I deserve that." He did. He knew it. I knew it. No theatrics needed. When he stood to leave, he said one last thing. "I'm glad you're doing better, Camille. You deserve someone who values you." "I do," I said, "and someday I will." He nodded, gave a small, broken smile, and walked out. I didn't watch him go. 7 months after he slid that folder across our table, my house finally feels like mine. I repainted the bedroom, rearranged the living room, donated the rug we fought about. I planted herbs on the kitchen windowsill, bought a new desk, moved my office to the sunniest room in the house because I can. The 47,000 Mark's parents returned. It sits untouched in a separate account. Every time I think about using it, my stomach twists. It feels tainted, like a refund for pain. So I'm considering donating it to a fund that helps victims of financial fraud rebuild. Turn something ugly into something useful. I've started dating again, slowly, carefully, with eyes sharper than they used to be, but with a heart that's still capable of softness. Because what Mark did wasn't proof that love is dangerous. It was proof that ignoring red flags is. I survived something meant to break me, and I came out stronger. Not louder, not harder, just clearer. And that's enough.